Nice meeting you.
Yes. Nice to see you. Great to see you. Okay. We should talk all the time. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I always think
Good afternoon. You know that you've hired the right people when they start telling you what to do. I'm Kate Gale. I'm the co-founder and managing editor of Red Hen Press, and welcome to Red Hen Press. We're delighted to be here with all of you on this Easter weekend. I would like to invite you to just enjoy today. I think this is going to be an amazing event. We have Lynne Thompson to moderate, and she's an amazing moderator. But I'm going to start off today by telling you, by introducing to you the photographer who just put up this show yesterday. His name is Alfred Haymond. He lives here in Pasadena. And this photography exhibit represents work that he did very recently in the last few years, and he's going to tell us a little bit about it. Please welcome Alfred Haymond.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll try and keep my comments brief to make room for who we really came here to see. My name is Alfred Haymond. I'm a photographer here in the San Gabriel Valley area. The pieces that you see on the wall here are all in the wake of the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor incidents that we're all aware of. So everything here was captured in 2020. It was kind of a reluctant thing, and it was totally unplanned, but I just figured with all the riots and protests that were going on and all the news coverage that was happening around that time, that maybe we wanted to have some type of documentation in Pasadena, like what was going on in our little tiny town here. So with that, I took it upon myself just to try and be on hand at some of the various protest rallies, demonstrations, so on and so on. And what turned out was that, these things turned into days and nights, and it was just like such a charged period of time that I just really felt like, we need to preserve this, like more beyond somebody taking cell phone pictures and posting on their Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, because those are, I guess they're kind of like self-gratifying things. They're really not meant to last. And I wanted to do something that hopefully people will look back on decades from now and really check this out, and really look at this and really have conversations about it, and maybe see what can be done, to improve this. What's mind-blowing to me is that this was 2020, and you can look on the wall and see that this was the one place in time where it wasn't a African-American thing, it wasn't a Black thing. This was the first time that we, in my estimation, that we had everybody on board, all hands on deck. You can look around and you had, our Caucasian brothers and sisters, our Asian brothers and sisters, our Latino brothers and sisters, our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. We were all on the same page. Everybody was galvanized. Like, it wasn't a thing that, Black people were talking about, like, oh, this is happening to us again. Everybody felt it. If you looked at, George Floyd losing his life in real time on television, you couldn't help but be moved by that. If it didn't speak to you, it was almost like you don't have a soul. Like, if you can stand by and see somebody's life being taken right in front of you and not feel, the need to do something to get involved, something's wrong with me. So, for myself, I was just doing my part, and I'm glad that I was able to, tell my story in the way that I did. Here we are 3 years, since then, and it's almost like we haven't learned anything, and that's the sad part, that's the cold part. There's still an officer involved, shootings. If you look at the news, we had something here in Pasadena, something in Pasadena, just this year. And it's like, God damn, like, here we go again. I don't think we're gonna see this level of protests and rallies and everything like we had in 2020, because it's almost like, it's heavy, it's heavy on everybody. And I would hope that, my hope was that we wouldn't see this again. My parents went through the Watts riots. Myself and my wife, we were around during the time of the Rodney King incident. And, we have a son in his 20s. This is his riot time, his moment. And it's kind of like, how are we not getting it? Like, we are in this advanced age of technology, but we still haven't learned how to love each other. We haven't learned how to embrace each other. We haven't learned how to treat each other. And I don't know how this cycle is going to be broken, if it's even meant to be broken. That's a conversation that probably needs to be had. Maybe somebody with that's like I have, because I sure as hell can't understand it. It's like, you think these things are just black and white. This is right, this is wrong. But apparently, it's something that I don't know how to understand, because we just keep repeating this. So, but anyways, I want to thank the Red Hen Press for allowing me to be here, for sharing my work, and I hope that it moves people, that it sparks a conversation, whatever. And I think that's what it's about. I think art is meant to invoke, dialogue between people. It's meant to spark those conversations. So if that's what this does, and I'm happy that I've done my part. And once again, I want to thank Red Hen Press. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alfred. It's clear that we need as many voices and documentarians as we can get. Welcome, everybody. It's so good to see you all, to be back in community together. My name is Lynne Thompson, and I'm going to kick us off this afternoon. I'm going to read 5 poems. Then Dr. Briggs is going to grace us with his amazing music. Then I'll introduce Doug Manuel, and he'll read a little bit more music. And then I'll introduce Afaa Weaver, a little bit more music, and then we'll party afterwards. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yes.
Good. All right, I'm jumping right in. The only thing you need to know about these first 4 poems that I'm going to read is that my parents were born in the Caribbean on the small islands of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. My mother's island, Beckway, is probably about the size of this room, and yet I can't seem to stop writing poems about them. This first one is how I learned where we come from. When she wants him for the late meal, she calls, "Supper soon, Kingstown man, curry goat, sticky wicket." And he responds, testy, "Not yet ready, Beckway woman, Anglican church, basket with no handles." We children, we laugh, run for the hills and the tall, sweet grasses, listen for the lilt of frangipani tanty. She called, "Come in now, pigeon peas, mangoes, poor man's orchids." Then we run for true, and supper is all cassava root, callaloo, very little sugar cane, and we're in it all at once. Choir song above Mount Pleasant, Port Elizabeth, harp of Paget Farm, Till father, he say no, defends his slipped-on wishes for Soufriere, Sans-Souci, Guadalupe Bay, and so on into the evening. Calypso and steel drums, a little Rasta and Bob Marley for us young'uns, till finally we are no longer black ironwood, wood that will not float. To blackness. As it happens, I have never tired of blackness. It's Marcus Garvey raisin in the sun Tuskegee Airmen. It's Stryver's Row and Liver Lips. It's Dred Scott, Freedmen's Bureau, Scott Joplin. Some say black is swarthy, gloomy, evil, fiendish, but we all spring from the tribes, Ashanti, Bobo, Fulani, Wolof. Their cowrie shells and crobo beads sewn into our fading fabric. I don't know much about my native blackness. My daddy, he say Igbo, the only word he can give me, but it's the only word I need to get the old folks to remembering that in Igbo, ututu is morning, abali is night, and in any mirror, my ihu, my face, is always black. My body leaning into. You might expect as centerpiece, West Indian village with figures dancing. Instead, my immigrant parents buy a European imitation, hang Bal de Milan de la Galette in our vestibule. All I can ask is, are these the women you pray I will be? It's impossible to tell where each partner's shadow begins. Me, I like Archibald Motley's Saturday Night with its scarlet-clad heroine, her body, her brown arms unfolding from her body leaning into the rag and swing. One balding man wishing he wasn't wishing. A shot of bourbon and soda, bop and jive and jive and jive. To stun mother, I say, see the sommelier, how far he's willing to backbend cocktails listing to such risky angles just so he can wallow in the woman's satisfaction in simply being the center of everything. Siren. Eternally lured by Calypso, Daddy wanted to return to his birthplace, to the mighty sparrow. He knew about Heat's seduction, about steel pans, maracas, about the can boule, all brewed in the Indies' crucible of revolution. Undermining the peg box and scroll of a violin, Daddy also favored, yes, Vivaldi, who his sons said couldn't best Jelly Roll Morton and his Hepcots, blowing away the Nat King Cole's swingsters in every California beer joint until the money ran out. Sassy Vaughn singing Black Coffee and Nice Work If You Can Get It. Daddy admitted Duke and Roach with his jazz and three-quarter time were superior to any minor minuet, but sometimes he had a hunger for a polonaise, a Schoenberg 12-tone, a Bartok sonata that his daughter drowned out with Marvin Gaye's Stubborn Kind of Fella and Dizzy's Last Platter. Still, Daddy reminded us to kiss the ground of Port of Spain, where stick fighting's clatter gave way to fry pans and oil drums, or anything that could shimmy up a rhythm and put a dip in the hip of a late night worker, because that music had given birth to the flim-flam singers his children were calling musicians. Men twisting their fingers so hard it seemed they'd forgotten bamboo sticks, jawbones, and Belafonte blowing into white America. J-O! And oh, we didn't have a clue about the Akan or any other African tribe who handmade the first banjo, calabash, djembe, and the call of Zimbabwe's Mbera, that siren luring my daddy back to his calypso. And I'll close for this, and I'm going to read this for our wonderful photographer. Thank you for putting up the show for us today. Our ancestors, enslaved once, said Juneteenth would never be, oh say can you see. But then they said, my name is George, died with your knee on my neck. My name is Brianna, shot while asleep in my bed. My name is 9 worshipers at Emmanuel AME Church, and my name is quite young, like Trayvon, like Tamir. They said, my name is Homer Plessy and Lloyd Gaines. My name is Diane Nash and Merle Evers. They said, my name is Tulsa and Rosewood and Devil's Punch Bowl Natchez, is strange fruit and eyes turned toward Canada. My name is Taste of Gullah, of filet gumbo, is scar and rice seeds, is families torn and may I have permission. And they also said, my name has never been nigger gal or boy. My name is Henrietta Marie, alarm, rattler, and bones and bolts waiting to be found at the bottom of the sea. My name is Angola. My name is Senegambia. Then they said, in dawn's early light, we will celebrate and celebrate, however it is we choose to. Thank you. Take it away, Ray.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to introduce my pianist, Amy Rowe. So this piece I wrote for our ancestors that we were not allowed to remember or speak their names or their languages. Those who made the treacherous journey from the coast of West and Central Africa, across the Atlantic Ocean to the New World. This was written for what may have been the individual's feeling and thought process. Not just a big gray mass, not just a tribe, but people. And people who had been free. People who had a past, language, culture, customs, beliefs. But now they're in the whole ship. And they don't know where they're going. What they do know is that what they left behind, they'll probably never see again. So what would that be like? Some estimate 12 to 14 million Africans were forced into that journey. So this piece is for them. It's called The Middle Passage.
Wowie, 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 that was amazing. Another hand. So I hope you're as excited as I am to hear these two wonderful poets who are with us this afternoon. They have new books. Kate, I know my job is to help sell the books. There are books for sale. I think there'll be some time after the reading this afternoon for them to sign them for you, but I think you're in for a treat. I'm going to introduce first my buddy, Doug Manuel. So excited for you with the second book. Doug Manuel was born in Anderson, Indiana, and now resides in Long Beach, California. He received a BA in creative writing from Arizona State University, an MFA from Butler University, and a PhD in English literature and creative writing from the University of Southern California. His first collection of poems, Testify, won an IBPA Benjamin Franklin Award for Poetry, and his poems and essays can be found in numerous literary journals, magazines, and websites, most recently Zizaba, Pleiades, and the New Orleans Review. He has traveled to Egypt and Eritrea with the University of Iowa's International Writing Program to teach poetry. A recipient of the Dana Gioia Poetry Award and a fellowship from the Borshad Foundation Center on Literary Arts, he is a Bayard Rustin Fellow at Whittier College and teaches at Spalding University's low-res MFA program. Welcome, Doug Manuel.
That introduction was awesome. And thank you so much, Kate, for making this happen. It's such a pleasure to be with you again, Dr. Briggs, and goodness, y'all just put your whole foot in it, right? I don't even know what to think about that. And then always an honor, Afaa, like just again to be in your presence. I'm big on poetry paddle usually, but I think I'm just gonna say things right in the beginning and then kind of let this cascade over us. Trouble Funk. First thing you need to know is that my dad was a DJ. And the songs that he liked to spin are the titles for each one of the poems in here. And the year that you'll hear after, the song title is the narrative action of the poem. And I think the other thing that I want to say is, this is a story about how my parents got together, about how love has to be thick in the face of racism, about the ever-changing saying that's been documented around us. Much respect due to Alfred as well. Seriously, this is also powerful in your words. And I think the other thing is, so often in my life, because of forces that have worked upon my father, and Black men, and Black bodies, I've always felt like that we were villains or victims. And music's one of the ways that we get to be beautiful and powerful and free. So I think that's another reason why tonight, in this moment, is so important. I'm gonna read about 4 poems now. Seriously, thank y'all for being here. Let's Get Small, 1986. Same scream as the night before. She locks herself in the bathroom. He holds up the bathroom door with his back. Today's her birthday. Another job gone, the song of another woman all over his lips, caught. She could taste it. She screams, he screams, they scream. They scream, he screams, she screams. She screams, he screams, their scream. The same scream they'll began with. The same scream they'll end with. But really, it's older than that, deeper than that, and oh, so very Black. The same scream since the Middle Passage, since slavery, since Reconstruction, since Jim Crow, since the Great Migration, since redlining, since civil rights. So many screams slicing love. Music, the stitches, forgiveness inside a drum. He walks to the record player, puts on their song. The times 4/4, hard on the downbeats, staccato. Something to dance to, something to survive through. something that died too. The bathroom door sighs open, nothing but a mouth full of silence. Mothership Connection, 1975. Before DJs scratch, the breakdown was all drum fill, hand clap, bass slap, guitar wail, talk over the track, not yet rap, yet always rap, is funk, is rock, is blues, is jazz, is ragtime, is work song, in short, is black, always black on both sides, all the way down, black on black on black on black on black on black on black, same scream since. He rests acid on her tongue. You sure it's okay, she asks, lies asleep on the tip of his tongue, always and forever, don't wake them, she must never. Bell bottoms, crowning platform shoes. The groove moves, Denise and Damon, dons the crown as God. Late afternoons, the afternoon, again, them in the same bed. It turns to dawn, wet from sweat, the same bed, the same breath, each on its own riff. Ponds of acid trip, ponds of music, ponds of forget, but not the first time, but it will be the last. A whole summer they tumbled through a sonic drug buzz. He spins, she assembly lines, a Midwest song, a story of factories and dance halls. We're hiring, she says, if you ever want a real job. The next two are really gonna bear witness to the ever-changing same that we've been talking about a lot, and again, that's been documented here. One of the sad things about writing this text is I realize how much the 80s and the late 70s rhyme with our current moment, how so many of the things feel like it could be right now. It hurts to just play the same thing over and over again. Singing the same song, it's exhausting. So yeah. I ain't gonna stand for it anymore, 1981. When Lee Atwater said, you start out in 1954 saying nigger, 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 Denise and Damon both didn't know anything about it. Most of America didn't know either, but kind of did. Just as almost everybody in America really knows what the deal is, what our history is, what time it is. Damon likes to end his sentences with shit like, you know what it is, and I'm just a black man with a white man standing on my back. Denise and Damon didn't need to hear nobody say nothing about a Southern strategy to know the plot. The plot not hidden, but in plain view. Denise saw it when the rec center closed again, but this time never reopened. When Lisa stopped selling her food stamps because they got cut. When Denise saw Marcus walking to work because the bus fare got too high and nobody would take him. When Miss Angie started watching folks' children because Head Start wasn't going to open no more. When Uncle Ernie began taking his pills every other day because he couldn't afford to take them every day no more. When Granny Wilson missed dialysis for 4 days and didn't wake up no more. This is going to be the last one. And again, thank you so much. Your love means everything to me, 1981. Damon doesn't remember how old he was when he saw his papa on the ground hog-tied, the police laughing. This'll teach you, they said. Damon doesn't remember learning about the Klan, but he remembers the stories of crosses cutting the night sky open with flames. He's seen the charred grass, black as the pupil of an eye. The first time he was called nigger, he remembers. The word hurt more than Tommy's fist colliding with Damon's lips, him asking Amy, Tommy's sister, to be his Valentine. Sucking the bottom of his lip and swallowing blood, Damon's anger sizzled the whole way to the principal's office. Whipped at school, and once he got home, Damon's mama made him get a switch. This'll teach you, she said. The last time Damon talked smart to the cops, the barrel of the gun was warm against his face, as if the cop had just shot somebody. This'll teach you, they said. Thank you.
Okay, this next next piece is a composition by great James Weldon Johnson. So, lift every voice and sing, and known as the Black National Anthem, which many people I'm sure know. It's a piece I heard growing up a lot as a kid in Memphis. You hear it played in sacred spaces and churches a lot, as well as community centers. Not so much our schools, though, now that I think about it. I was in integrated schools and never heard it there, so it's kind of it marks certain spaces, right? And I think about hearing this song. But it's one of hope and one of promise, and the galvanization of Black folks to collectively rely on each other and look ahead. Which, when you think about the history of African people in this so-called new world, hasn't been great. Hasn't been great, and that's putting it mildly. And it's interesting to hear how our ability to even remember our past is now being challenged, right? Just to remember it. Not even to rectify it, just to remember it. We're fighting for that. So in the face of so much oppression, discrimination, killing, murder, marginalization, Black folks collectively cling to hope. And that hope is almost an eternal hope that generations pass on. Because if you look at it and you think about it in your own mind, you might say, well, just give up. Like 400 years? Are we there yet? Are we Americans yet? Not yet. So, I mean, the cynic would say, but there's a spirit within Black folks collectively. Not to say there are some Black people that we're all tired, and there's some that might even disagree. But collectively, there's this sense of we're pushing forward, we're pushing on. And where we stand now is very much the hope and the dream of those that were before us. And even if we don't necessarily feel that we're in the best place, we honor them. And so we stand as strong as we can today, and we look forward and we catapult the next generation forward. So this piece is about that.
That was very dangerous. I was just about to burst into song. That was beautiful, beautiful rendition. I love that. Okay, moving on to our last poet of the evening. For those of you who are familiar with the work of Afaa Weaver, you know how special it is to have him fly all the way across the country to be with us today. Very special. Afaa Michael Weaver, previously known as Michael S. Weaver, is a native of Baltimore, Maryland, where he graduated Polytechnic High School at the age of 16. After 2 years at the University of Maryland in College Park, he left to spend 15 years working in Baltimore factories, during which time he wrote and published poetry, journalism, and short fiction, as well as founded Seventh Son Press. He received the Kingsley Tufts Award, Phyllis Wheatley Book Award, 4 Pushcart Prizes, and has been published in 2 volumes of Best American Poetry. His other awards include the May Sarton Award, a Pew Fellowship in Poetry, 1998, a Fulbright appointment, 2002, to teach in Taiwan, the Gold Friendship Medal 2005 from the Beijing Writers Association, and a Guggenheim Fellowship 2017 in poetry. Other than that, he hasn't really been doing very much. He lives in the Hudson Valley of New York with Kristen Schedule, his wife. Please welcome Afaa Weaver.
Thank you. What a pleasure it is to be here. Thank you, Redhead, Kate, the Board of Directors for publishing this book. And what a wonderful assortment, the photography, the music. It's just beautiful. And it's in what was once an African-American church. I'd like to dedicate my reading to my 2 sons, Sean and Kala, both of whom passed away. Kala actually was born the same year as George Floyd. An elegy for Lucille Clifton. On to a heathen country, from her poem, Slave Ships. It's the old Shirley Highway, the road a woman inspired, flat in the curves, the way for farmers to go home. I turn to hear the way you reach deep in the crevice of a tale to let me know the secrets of how to get through. There is a fire in the hills. Are we lost? It's my father's last new car, the green Chevy he bought from Charlie Irish just as I was getting to know the price. Mule towns drop out of the lips of clouds the way buffalo must have puffed at night, and I know the legend you are. There is a fire in the hills. Are we lost? If a radio could catch the frequency of a magic woman with ears to heaven, it would sit still now between us. The words rise up from the way we lose time in the fold of by and by that slipped anacrusis of gospels. There's a fire in the hills. Are we lost? One of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War, American Civil War, took place at Antietam in Western Maryland. And I drove out there one day because I just wanted to see the place and feel it. And it was overwhelming. There were so many casualties, they had to bury them right there in the fields, many of them. And I just rode through and listened to a program on NPR about the Ganges. This Civil War, yet unresolved, at Antietam. The River Ganges is on NPR all upside the fence, running past the bumper of the car I have forgotten. Rough rails laid in its X's and places, stiff, stoic. The river on the other side of the world where souls remember instead of forgetting. Folk washing lives like dirty clothes. while I creep around corners where the rifles and the screaming songs of the dead lie in the grass to be awakened again. Some southern way sings in me, this is the ground I know. For a soldier, there is a last day written in a diary we learn in training, one thing at a time. Assemble, disassemble, take the carriage apart in 15 seconds. Apply a steady hand to the wound when packs are too far away. Hold the blood when it wants to go. Sing the prayer song your mother taught you when she was about to make the journey across the river. Stonewall Jackson said, let us lie up under the tree for a while and stop aching. I got a mind to get out of the car and walk all over this killing field, but the air conditioner is like Jack Daniels with Coke in the evenings on a porch, letting the air slide across the fields, a porch like the one I see now, my barefoot and kind uncles sleeping off the life of sharecroppers' sons, the wealth of white sand caking around their ankles, spotted with rain, and I know the justice of these fields, the way corn raises its throat to a God who went somewhere and sat down to rest his nerves. There was an incident in Charleston. Some of you may remember a young white man who was committed to what he called white supremacy. And he went into an AME church and pretended to want to worship, and actually sat with the folk for a while before he opened fire and started killing them. And I was raised in the church, so to speak, a Southern Baptist, somewhat fundamentalist. And I was talking to a white editor once, and she said, you were raised in the church? I said, yes, raised in the church. So this seemed even more evil that he would do something like that. What a fellowship for Mother Emanuel, AME. In these clasped hands, we see the seeds of what has come to be, the tiny black faces of children chained into ships headed to sea. Not an invitation to a better life, not a vote for the human, but the deadened greed, a wish against what life means to the living, a cruelty above the requirements of evil, our ambition to live, to survive, to grow beyond chains, now our only hope in row after row of bloody pews. In these clasped hands, we see the business of selling human beings, white hands of banks, the black hands of enemies selling enemies, to regal promenades in France, in Belgium, to arrogant philosophies of enlightenment, a plotting Kant, of foolish Hume, murderers in the name of knowledge, architects of theft, a broad sweep to rape the world and grow fat, to assume, to consume, to accumulate, to kill. In these clasped hands, we see the endless heart, proud hands that bent heads down to save them, carrying souls that made a new love from carnage. The wreckage of lives, piles of bones crumbling to dust in mounds all around, forming breath from stench, forming the sweet Sunday dinner after church, after gathering around the word of this new God with the promise of a Redeemer, a hand with the power to end death's bondage. In these clasped hands, we hear the songs, the mourning, the celebrations from worlds left in Africa, forgotten except in the pulse of what we remember of the drum, the stomp of holy dances, of invoking the Holy Spirit to visit, opening our prayer to wine, to fire, to the great wash of oceans, to mountains rising and falling in visions, to dominions over fish, fowl, beast, and Eden's contract. In these clasped hands, we hear Philadelphia, white crochet crowns on the heads of our matrons, waiting to receive communion, throats clearing for the next hymn, the ritual cheers to pastors stuck in old sermons, the occasional Baptist eruption in mystic AME precision, the way we wind the stairs to building a life where the brick and mortar are the bone and soul of courage, of the get on up now somehow. In these clasped hands, we hold the hope of another day, braided on strands of grief, across what divides us, what makes us one. So I teach part-time now. I've retired from full-time teaching. And I teach at Sarah Lawrence, one course a year. And the students have come to call it Afaa's Craft Shop. So a shout out to my students from Sarah Lawrence and Simmons, my students everywhere, some overseas. To all of you, thank you for giving me a chance to be a teacher. And Breonna Taylor, oh, may you be at peace. What a terrible thing. Midnight air in Louisville for Breonna Taylor. Dear Breonna, how many times, I ask, how many times have I chased the thought of writing to you, of catching a poem where it cannot leave, of knocking open the door to a grief we all hold, our hearts full of questions. We leave our houses to work, to look for what we need to live, or what we need to make the pain go away. And your voice rises, oh, hell to the no. No, he didn't. Satan, get behind me. Whatever the hell you think you are. I imagine that in leaving all of us, you said, I am done. I am let out into the world. Breath I took in from it, breath that I give back in love. May I see you in flight, filling the space beyond clouds and stars, where there is no need of sun or moon, where a grand city lives in prophecies beaten by the wheels of history, where you are not invisible to ancestors who saw these long roads down through time to this one night in Louisville. Bright angel, luminescence, woman who saved lives in emergency rooms, invocation of heaven's law, living song, riding the eternal dawn. These titles I summon from license, given by eternal mysteries to hold you, fly now in the woven air of the saints. And I will close with a poem that is my credo. My mentor in graduate school at Brown was the late George Houston Bass. May he also be at peace. He was secretary to Langston Hughes, one of Langston Hughes' secretaries, an executor of Mr. Hughes' estate. And I studied playwriting mostly at Brown. Most people don't know that. But Professor Bass helped confirm me as being in the lineage of Langston Hughes. And he said to me, a playwright always has a credo. And as a poet, this is my credo. To Malcolm X on his second coming. Malcolm X, alias El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, alias Malcolm Little, alias Detroit Red, deceased. The coffin breaks, fingers wriggle through clay, touch the light, a chiseled face comes full with flesh, eyes roaming the landscape of his own prophecy. Negroes and their infinities, Benzes and BMWs, chains of gold around their necks, 50 tons of gold for teeth, sneakers handmade in the glass pavilions of murderers. Hip-hop stirring the empty souls up from this tomb and our lost hopes. He stands and prays into Allah's outstretched hands for mercy. This is why he came back. On a plantation porch, little Missy plays with Liza, offering her lemonade. Liza, tell me again about them runaways you turned in. Them bad bucks daddy hanged and cut up. Lovely little Liza May. Brown eyes, brown eyes. At 5 o'clock in the morning in Baltimore, in Philadelphia, in New York, in Newark, in Chicago, the fresh morning water of showers falls, and the followers of Elijah utter their morning prayers. Allah the Beneficent, Allah the Merciful, all praises to Allah, the nation of Islam, hope of the resurrection of the so-called Negro, comes to life, the life before the death of the Master. Liza, where your mind, child? Me and the other boys had plans for being free and coming back for y'all. My mama raised you from a little nothing and you turned us, and now we rot in some place with no name, cut up like dog meat. Liza, where your mind? Malcolm walks in Harlem among the broken streets, gathering mystified eyes, and Sylvia's, he pokes his head in and asks what food there is for the soul. Some woman says, you look just like Malcolm X. You should have been in that movie the boy Spike Lee made. And she goes on cutting up custard pies and singing a gospel song she wrote. Malcolm goes over to St. Nicholas Avenue, looks down on the city. Afternoon shadows begin to fall like the difficult questions of his father. Malcolm mourns his mother, the abyss she fell into and could not escape, the abyss of his genius, and a glimmer, an angel settles on his shoulder, as small as a pin, but with a voice like a choir singing, no more grief, blessed son, no more grief. Malcolm falls to the pavement, sobbing for Elijah. Little Missy sits in her bedroom chair, sewing eyes on her doll, singing. Liza listens to night sounds, afraid of darkening the door to tomorrow. Little Missy says, Liza, come around here and rub my feet before you go to my daddy's room. In the Audubon Ballroom the night he was killed, Malcolm X saw his assassins rise amid a host of spirits battling for his life. Demons and angels fill the space, battling for his soft head as his eyes took Allah's kiss. His murder was a rupture in the soul of the spirit, the demons rushing desperately to name their position in the African heart, where the angels fought to defend God's voice, uttering his own holy name, Allah. Malcolm's head hit the stage like a giant stone from Zimbabwe. Landing on earth, his mind took on its solace while his spirit was filled with song, O blessed son, come unto me, O blessed son. In front of the Schomburg, Malcolm rises above the city, his mind covering all of Harlem, while he issues the manifesto. On self-defense, strike me and I will strike you back. On freedom, freedom is a fire waiting to come. On the future, no profit will come from destruction. On the nation of Islam, the saved are still saving. Caravans form in the streets, unloading the unconscious souls. The open eyes of the living dead stare from windows and shops at this voice that is at every doorway, this body that is the landscape, as if the city is now flesh. In one moment he is there, and then he is gone, letting their bodies go softly back into time. Negroes wonder what has been among them and is now gone. Malcolm sits on steps on Convent Avenue, again just another man. An old woman pulling a cart comes to him, touches his head, and both of them vanish into Allah's wish. The wise among us chant the filling of our life with life. Take this fragment of a gift from heaven and anoint the heads of the young, who are our promise to live. Teach, Master, teach. Teach, Master, teach. Teach, Master, teach. Wa alaikum salam. Thank you.
Are we having
And we have, we still have some
We have another
questions.
piece, yes.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Any other questions?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, no, you're right.
You good? Try to get out.
Yeah, we want to hear one more.
You can hear me okay, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so this last tune is it's the blues. You know, blues is some say the most important American music form because so many things sprung from it. As African Americans are getting a taste of freedom, not full freedom, still working on that, but a taste of freedom. The music changes. And so it's not a stretch to say that to understand Black people, you must understand Black music. Because the music expresses a lot of things that can't be said. Historically can't be said because of danger. African customs also code things in ways that you have to know the language and know the speaker and interpret what they mean in that context. There's a lot of that in Black cultural music. And so the blues is interesting because many people think it's only sad and always sad, but really the blues is human experience made audible. There are blues that are funny, sometimes it's bittersweet. As they say, you know, we laugh, keep from crying. So we take situations that really say, this is horrible, but it makes some humor of it so we can deal with it, right? You can be angry. The blues covers all of that, which is why it speaks to all people. You don't have to be so-called Black to like the blues, to know it, to feel it, because all you need is a pulse and some life experience. You say, okay, yeah, I think I understand it, right? And so this tune I wrote for my hometown, Memphis, Tennessee. And you know, a lot of things are happening in Memphis. It's a great place to be. You know, I say it's a great place to be from. Great place to be from. A lot of good music. But I want to remember Tyree Nichols. You know, there's a lot of pain there. Memphis is still working on it. But this is called the Memphis Lowdown.
Well, if we aren't full up today, I just don't even know what to say. That was really, really terrific. And I just am a little verklempt here, but I'm going to ask a few questions of our honored poets and then open it up to the floor for any of you who might have some questions. I could talk to the two of you all day long, but let's make sure we give our audience a chance as well. Doug, let me start with you and ask, since the poems in the book came from the music that you heard your father play and others heard him play as a DJ, I'm assuming you had 1,000 choices that you could pick from in terms of what songs you wanted to incorporate that. And I want to know first how you made that choice. And second of all, whether you said, I just like that title and I'm going to write a poem, or the poem came and you looked for the title that suited the poem.
Well, thank you so much, Lynn. Those questions are all so perfect. The first thing, how I selected the songs. So part of this project was really me and my father getting to know each other well again and kind of finding a way to more reenact a healthy father-son relationship. So oftentimes we would just be talking and I'd ask him for stories about him and Ma, and he would just say, and that reminds me of when I would play X. So a lot of times there was a matchup between kind of the narrative action of what was happening, plus he'd be like, that went down. But then other times, we often talk about with title making, how a title can either be kind of like a hat that matches your outfit, or a title can be a hat that totally clashes with it. So sometimes I'm trying to create a little disjunction. So then I would think about, some of the songs that he would say would be like party stoppers, like the ones that just make everybody go crazy, right? And have that up against a more kind of sad scene and see how that feels together. So oftentimes I was trying to, be almost movie-like with this, of like, if this was playing behind, how would you feel? And again, kind of building off polar opposites, or again, having that nice little match too. So that's kind of how it went down.
I'm so jealous. I'm completely title challenged, so I'm gonna come and hang out with you. Afaa, for those of us who are familiar and for those of us who are not familiar, we know that a lot of your work has been influenced by your engagement with Asian cultures, philosophies, and with religious history as a whole, more broadly. And I was wondering, in this particular collection, this new collection, which is explicit about the life of American Black men, how does that engagement figure in the writing of these poems, and how do you want us to take them in?
Well, you said easy questions. Okay. So I'm 21 years old and I get my first copy of the Tao Te Ching. And it's translated by Jiao Feng and his wife, the photographer, Jane English. And then 5 years later, I found my first long-running Tai Chi teacher. And so in those days, we called it biofeedback. All right, now we talk about somatic experiencing and body keeping the score and so on. But my poetry just sort of had its incubation in the grief and love of adolescence. And then when I discovered the Chinese cultural aspect, my work came together. I began to be really productive consistently. And so my growth as a human being parallels my pursuit and practice of things. And from that, I went to Taiwan on a Fulbright. We'll fast forward to the year 2001 from 1978. Okay. And I find another teacher in Boston. And so when I come back from Taiwan, I understand that my Chinese is really not good at all. It was non-existent. Mayo didn't have any. And so I started studying Mandarin. I was 50 years old. I took the faculty audit option at Simmons. And the Fulbright Committee sent out, a Fulbright Association sent out a newsletter saying, continue your work and possibly through conferences. And so, I'll hold a conference of poets from Taiwan or from mainland or from Hong Kong. At that time, Hong Kong was still there. Which I did at Simmons, and they came from all over, and it was tremendous. And at the same time, I became one of my teacher's Taoist disciples. So I have a kind of a lay monk, except I'm married, and so I meditate every day, faithfully. And so my growth and my being are informed. My sense of myself as a man who's also a survivor of trauma is deeply personally woven into my experience of Chinese culture. My experience of it is different from the way it manifests in different places, and the Chinese diaspora is not the same in Hong Kong, and so on. But yes, in this book, in reflecting on this book, which is an accumulation of my witnessing over a period of years, I look at different sides of things, because looking into the system, as I call it, which I saw more clearly even when I went to India last October, we're living in this part of the post-colonial phase. India has been free, quote unquote, independent for 75 years. Roughly around the time as China got rid of the foreigners there. And we're in this tremendous global shift and struggle for power. And I experienced that as someone who's worked closely with poets in China and Taiwan and Hong Kong. And then there's the Tai Chi. So yes, my perception of myself, which brings us into a discussion of identity. We went say that. It's closely tied to Asian, specifically Chinese cultural participation.
Thank you. I feel like I need to learn another language immediately. And it's nice to know it's never too late, right? So Doug, first of all, I love the title of the collection as a whole, Trouble Funk, which made me think of Motown's Funk Brothers, on and on and on. And from there I leapt to, and I don't want to get in trouble with Kate, but are you planning on, this is really as a softball, a link as you go forward with readings from this book to a Spotify list or a playlist of some sort? Maybe we'll insert a page in the book, something like that, because I wanted my list. I wanted my links.
Yeah, no, there'll definitely be a Spotify playlist that we'll talk about and have going, just so it can be spread around. But yeah, no, Trouble Funk. One of the things, people sleep on go-go music a lot, you know, DC stand up, DC stand up. And one of the reasons why my dad was such a popular DJ was, you know, it was all about trying to find these exclusive songs. So when he discovered go-go at the time, you know, which is kind of this precursor for hip hop, but like also big bands and kind of like funk, like as well, really cool sound. When he would play Trouble Funk stuff, like he would say, again, those would be party stoppers. So yes, there will be a playlist, and just much respect due to Trouble Funk, the band. Like without them, I don't even know if I could have gotten this project. The first poem, Let's Get Small, is one of their cuts.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to try to make this as much of a softball as I can. So Terrence Hayes, the wonderful poet Terrence Hayes, gave you a wonderful citation on your book, and he said, quote, that A Fire in the Hills holds lyrical inventories, telepathic persona poems, southern chants for spells, I love that, spinning top hairdos, and inventive forms. I'm curious to know whether this multiplicity of stylistic choices was intentional when you set out to write this collection, or whether it was a joyous discovery.
Joyous discovery, easy answer. I was talking to Terrence, and he told me that he and Joel Porter, sometimes we call him Joel Porter, spent a lot of time trying to figure out the backspin of hope, which is in the book here. And so it came out of a concept. This was around 12, 15 years ago, maybe longer. And I thought, well, what happens if I take the principle of serial repetition of painting? So I took 5 or 6 lines, just repeated those lines for 2.5, almost 3 pages. And then I came through over a period of years, just changing one word here and there. It's like a composer might work. And then I started, because it's all about vernacular expression. So publicly, I'm answering the question. I wouldn't tell Terrence publicly answering the question, but it's that. And when I wrote the poem to Breonna Taylor, I just imagined writing, to someone in the other dimension. And the poem, The Game of Losing, is not about, but it uses that parallel construction that which is biblical,
Right.
And but different other things. And so they're different. And Terrence said I'm a non-conforming formalist, which is probably true. So yeah, so there are a lot of those things were invented or just modified. Some merging of painting, and then also just in What a Fellowship, the poem about the AME Church. There's a lot of history about, say for example, the connection, sometimes competition between Baptists and AME, because the Baptists say the AME can't sing, So when I became an AME in my previous marriage in Philadelphia, then I said, oh, well, they're trying, There's that in the history of philosophy, David Hume, Immanuel Kant, they actually had a hierarchy, a pyramid of humanity, and Africans were at the bottom with the primates. But their other ideal, and Thomas Carlyle, their other idea was that African people were not human because they were incapable of producing creative literature. And so you take that along with Cartesian thought, and here we are, you know. And so that, that's what is in some of the poems.
Thank you. It was interesting to me listening to both of these poets. We did not plan our reading. We did not discuss what we were going to read. And the threads just through it, through the three of us, was pretty shocking and stunning to me that happened. So thank you to both of you. Let's open it to the audience. I think we have time for maybe one or two questions. And if you raise your hand, I think Toby will bring you the mic. Don't be shy. I know this is not a shy crowd. Don't even try it. There you go. Thank you, Monica.
Doug, I noticed that you were taking notes. Would you care to, I guess, explain kind of the importance of continuing to learn as a poet and what you think you learned from today's conversation?
Yeah, no, always writing and always thinking about how meaning's being made. And plus, Lynne Thompson and Afaa M were speaking, so of course I was taking notes. But no, I think my biggest takeaway from the day is what feeds us and what nourishes us. And it seems like it's music, it seems like that it's gathering together, it seems that all that might be enough to keep on going, even though what happened in Tennessee and what's happening in Lebanon and what's happening, I can just go on and on and on. I think, you know, these kind of moments make it pretty and make it worth doing again. So I think that's my biggest takeaway.
Other questions? That's okay. If none, okay, we have a question.
So I have a question coming from a compositional standpoint for open to all three of you. When you write poetry, are you thinking of the title first and that brings the poem, or is it more like exploring writing and then you find your poetry through that? If that makes sense. Like, are you thinking of the story first, or if the story happens and then you go from there?
My answer is brief, and then I'm going to pass it over to Afaa. I never think of the title first because I'm title challenged, and it goes through many iterations. So usually it's more like start writing the lines from one side of the page to the other, literally, and then going back and shaping it, and maybe if I'm lucky, the title will show up.
Usually the sound of words together, or an image, or a feeling will come first. Sometimes the title, but usually not. And I'll come back and rework the title. You know, I was thinking of a way of talking about just this thing, the composition of the word, and to my students. And I was thinking, well, maybe I'll try to talk to them about embroidery, braiding, how things are woven together. And a method of mine that I used when I was young, and I worked in factories when I was young. And I had, in my mind, my model was Solzhenitsyn, because when he was in the gulag, he couldn't have papers, so he memorized things that didn't come out, or, you know, or people would do the same with, I won't go into another industry, but to hold those things. And so I would compose in my head while I was working sometimes. And so even now, if I'm clearing out the garage or walking around the side of the house, something will come to me. And it's kind of meditative sometimes because it's supported by what I see while I'm walking, you know, coming back, and then I'll sit down. So there are different things about it, you know. The enclosure and the limiting space of factory work made it necessary to work like that. You know, so And I try not to do it so much because I don't want to be caught. So I try to like make doodles and things, you know. And my wife says, you need to keep that piece of paper. I said, nah, I'll get back to it. Kind of lackadaisical.
It reminds me of Lucille Clifton saying the same thing. She said, I'm raising 6 kids. I don't have time to sit down and write a poem. What did you have?
For me, titles, except for this book, of course, like I talked about trying to kind of create meaning and disjunction between the title of the song and like the groove of the song and the narrative action. Like this book was way different, like concept books that usually are. But for the first book, and usually my process is title last. Like I always find that last. And trying to milk out and find the truth of the poem first, and then decide like, how do I want the title to be? Is it going to set the scene, again, be a hat that matches, or is it going to work against it? But yeah, last, except for this project.
Sure.
Yes.
Thinking about the photography that's here and the music. When I was young, I also imagined myself to be a photographer, but I'm colorblind. And so there was a black photographer in Washington who had an exhibit going up at the Corcoran, I believe it was, and he sat down with me back in 1976. He said, you're colorblind, so organize geometrically. And he showed me a circle and talked to me about placing the landscape and positioning. And that goes with my work sometimes. It's very visual. People have said that to me. I feel that. But then also, I took one course in music theory when I was in graduate school to talk about torture. But it gave me great appreciation, So when I'm listening to it, I said, oh, he's got a soprano sax. So I hear the piano. I said, their left hand's doing that. Yeah. And that goes into my composing, how I see things, It was really a difficult course. I was an audit as a graduate student, Nancy Rosenberg was her name, a teacher at Brown. And so I still have my books at home, but I, 7.5 steps back.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy Rosenberg, wherever you are, because this afternoon has been anything but torture. It has been a joy and delight to have both of you. Thank you to the audience, to our live stream audience as well. We know you're out there. Thank you for joining us. Let's have a little book signing, a little something to eat, a little something to drink. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm just hopping up here real fast to say thank you all so much for coming here to this Red Hem Press event in our Penthouse Literary Center. I just want to, first of all, thank everybody for being here. We have our ASL interpreters, Lynne Thompson and Tara Trafford. And of course, Lynne Thompson, Douglas Manuel, Afaa Weaver. Our musicians, Dr. Ray Briggs and pianist Amy Rowe. Of course, our photographer, Alfred Haymond. And of course, Kate Gale and Monica Fernandez for putting this whole event together. Monica. And I just want to bring up a couple of events we have coming up just in about a week, 2 weeks, with Kevin Chen and Pete Sue in conversation, April 21st. And then we have another couple of NEA events coming up. One is April 29th with Brenda Cardenas and Phuong T. Buong, moderated by Francisco Aragon, who's the editor of our Letras Latina series. And then on May 18th, we have Richard Blanco and C. Bain, moderated by Michelle Chihara from the Los Angeles Review of Books. Those will both be fabulous events. And for now, you can get some books, get them signed by the authors, drink some wine, and we'll chat with you after the show. Thank you all very much.